and Indian Muslims. And our very honorable Dr. Shiri Mazari, who needs no introduction. She's an academic, she's a politician, she's a journalist, she's a fearless lady. She's a PhD from Columbia University in political science and has taught in leading universities in Pakistan. To begin our first session, I invite to request Mr. Khalid Rahman, who's the Executive President of Institute of Policy Studies, to come on the dais and share his remarks on this topic. Thank you.
Dr. Shiri Mazari, Federal Institute for Human Rights and distinguished guests. On behalf of Institute of Policy Studies, its chairman and IPS team, I welcome you all to this morning's session, Hindutva Policy and the State of Minority in India. I am grateful to all of you, particularly our panel of speakers, which includes guests from UK and USA also, for taking out time to join us here and contribute on this extremely important subject. Many of you might be aware that Institute of Policy Studies was founded in 1979 and is now about to complete its 40 years. We are thankful to Allah Almighty for His blessings which have enabled us to whatever little contribution we have able to make. At the same time, I would like to recognize all our friends, associates, and well-wishers, without whose guidance and cooperation this journey may not have been possible. Today's seminar and its subject has a significance to the priorities that IPS has kept before it. At IPS, we carry out research and academic work under three broad areas, mainly Pakistan affairs, international relations, and faith and society. You will agree that today's subject has a direct relevance to all the three areas and therefore has overlapping implications. Let me briefly present four important dimensions in this regard. First is the bilateral context. India is our immediate neighbor. We share a long border with it. And attached with this is the historical perspective. Whereas economic, social, and cultural linkages, coupled with the questions that what is the ideally be, are important dimensions of our relations with India. The conflicts going on since decades between Pakistan and India is yet another aspect which determines the relations between the two countries. Hence, anything which helps understanding the dynamics of Indian society and polity becomes directly relevant and extremely important to any institution working on Pakistan affairs and Pakistan studies. The other significant rarity is related to the regional scenario. India, no doubt, is a big country and one of the key players in the region. such a country automatically plays an important role in regional politics. In this context, cordial relations or the lack thereof between India and any of its neighbors does not only affect both states but also impacts the regional situation. The study of the prevailing and emerging trends in India becomes inevitable from this perspective as well. The third aspect is related to the global governance. We all know that India aspires to play a bigger role at international level compared to what it is currently allowed to play. It has been trying hard to become a member of the UN Security Council for quite a while. Although it is seventh in terms of area, population-wise it constitutes about 18% of the world population. Similarly, its contribution to global GDP is less than 3%, but it now occupies the third place in terms of purchasing power parity. The country seeks a bigger role to play in international affairs, mainly due to its size, though there are other arguments as well. Thus, if international relations are to be deliberated, the study of India, its governance style and policies become an important subject of research. And I should also mention that various resolutions passed by the United Nations over Kashmir in the context of international relations further signify the need of such a focus. The fourth aspect is related to the Indian minorities, particularly the Muslim minority. Muslims, as we all know, constitute a big portion of the country's around 20% minorities. This makes the study of India even more important, as this Muslim population is in fact larger than what resides in many Muslim countries. In fact, on the same basis, India has also been claiming, though not that loudly, to become part of a platform like OIC for the last so many years. Let me, however, accept that in spite of so much significance and the fact that a lot of discussions and debates regarding India continue to be held in the political and media discourse in Pakistan, very few people or institutions make efforts to study it as a proper subject on the basis of concrete facts. I must also admit that we at IPS have also not been able to fully play our part in this regard. Nevertheless, I feel happy to share that today's international conference is second in sequence, besides a number of smaller initiatives we have taken during these years. And I am also pleased to share that a book based on the proceedings of the last year's conference has been published and is being launched today. Today's conference is also important in the context of continuously increasing global connectivity and the subsequently contracting world of today. We all know that the general elections are about to be held in India in the coming few weeks. There are many big and small and local as well as regional and national political parties contesting in the elections. But would the new elections once again bring in power the staunch followers of Hindutva for the next 5 years is the key question of inquiry at the national as well as international levels. The importance of this question has increased manifold in view of the fact that extremist forces in India are seen becoming out of control, particularly during last 5 years. We know that Hindutva and the forces following extremist ideology are not in any way a new phenomena, as they have been active since India gained independence, rather even before. Yet, the freedom and the influence these forces enjoy in today's India, and the way it has given to religion-based divisions, injustices, oppression and suppression in Indian society is unparalleled. The irony is that this extremist trend is gaining momentum in spite of having a constitutional claim of India being a secular country. This, no doubt, is a matter of concern not only for the serious and sober sections of Indian society, but also for anyone living even outside India, if he is interested in regional and global peace, prosperity and justice. India, with so much of its significance, can be an important player in pushing such an agenda of peace, prosperity and justice to both backward and forward. How could it be pursued to choose the correct path is an important question. Indeed, there is a dire need for all peace and justice loving people to get together and try to play a positive role in this regard. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a world that is more happening than ever. While each happening has its own dynamics, many a times these are designed, or if not designed, used to generate or influence the ongoing discourse. A most pertinent example, which do have a relevance to our seminar also, is the Pulwama incident and the aggressive posture that can be so obviously observed in our neighborhood. I would, however, like to reiterate that the prospective agenda for today is to see the things holistically and in the larger context. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khalid Rahman, for your views on today's seminar. Hindutva, as he said, is not a new phenomenon. It existed even before the birth of Pakistan. The major concern is that it's gaining momentum every day, and the only solution is that the peace-loving people in India and outside India should come together to play a role as to how to deal with this growing threat. Now I would like to invite our honourable chief guest for her remarks, Dr. Shiri Mazari. You all know she's an academic. Okay, so our next speaker would be Dr. Mujib Afzal, who is the assistant professor in School of Politics and International Relations at Quaid-e-Azam University. He's the author of the book Bharatiya Janata Party and Indian Muslims. Welcome, sir, to the dais.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful to IPS and South. Nation of national self. It is true to the historic states as well. New states that were created in colonial period, and also the states they have a claim to be historic states. And they have also, because they were defined in their present shape, socially, politically, and geographically during the colonial era. So states and the societies was composed in interaction with colonialism, modernity, and tradition. In the post-independence era, elite middle classes of all these states are involved in the nation-building process. Generally, they are diverse and composed of various ethnic and social groups. So these competing discourses add to their diversity and generally create a socio-political crisis that lead them to dictatorship, civil wars, and mostly the collapse of the state and society. India is, in the same way, a new post-colonial state with competing discourses of self-definition, with two advantages. The first advantage it has that it has a national consensus over a functioning constitutional electoral order. Though on the periphery of it, like Mizoram, Nagaland, Kashmir, and Naxalbaris, it do have a violent conflicts, but its mainstream is committed to the electoral system. Secondly, second advantage is that no great power is interested in the fragmentation of India. Even its close neighbor, China, is not interested. So we find virtually no help coming for the Naxalbaris, the Maoist movement in India, from the China. That's why many discourses compete for the domination through electoral mobilization in India. This is on the basis of class, caste, region, and ideology. Hindutva is one of them. That presents itself as the alternative to the Nehruvian discourse of secularism and composite culture. The process is very simple to mobilize social groups on the basis of interest, and interest, by the way, is a combination of idea and the material interest, and form a constituency in a shape of a vote bank that could vote in election for them. So it is a process of acquisition of a vote bank to come into power. Hindutva ethno-religious is an ethno-religious term that's literally mean Hinduness, coined by the upper caste and class, mostly Brahmins. So its early leaders were all Brahmins. And they have essentially two objectives to it. First, to preserve their social caste privileged position against the equalitarian values of modernity. Second, to have access to the new sources of power, that is, bureaucratic jobs and the larger support base in the electoral politics. And the entire concept of Hindutva have three basic elements to it. First, that Hindus are those who share blood, language, and culture with each other. So Hindu Rashtra or nation must share five major elements: geography, race, religion, culture, and languages. All these factors have to be Indian, and they must all treat India as a holy land. Secondly, they claim that they are the descendants of Aryas. Not simply that they are the descendants of Aryas, but Aryas were the son of the soil. They never migrated from outside, but came from within, and through divine sources, they received Vedas, the Holy Scripture. And thirdly, because of this definition, Indian Muslim Christians have no share to it. They have to accept subordinate status, accept the supremacy of Hindu culture. So essentially, they are envisaging a hierarchical society. There were two major organizations that pursued the Hindutva project. Initially, it was the Hindu Mahasabha, whose president, V.D. Savarkar, made a biggest contribution by writing a book on Hindutva. But Hindu Mahasabha didn't play a major role, and in the 60s gradually disappeared. But the second biggest party is Rashtriya Swami Sevak Sangh, RSS, that it essentially claimed that it is a social organization and it is a Hindu Rashtra, Hindu nation in a miniature. Its purpose is to create a dedicated workers for this project who are physically fit and live the life of austerity and celibacy, and they term them as pracharaks. For this, they create centers, SHA, which they term as SHA, which are training centers with two essential elements to create masculinity among their own workers. One is Akhada, where they have physical training. Along with it is the Hanuman temple, which is associated with the masculinity in Hindu religion. Now, they have the center in Nagpur. So imagine after all these years, they have 6 million subcharaks, 5,800 and 967 functioning shops at 37,190 places. They have the presence in 39 countries. They have almost 36 affiliated organizations in every walk of life, from accountancy to the students, teachers, everywhere. Even they have a wing for the Muslims of India, Muslim Rashtriya Manch. And they have 800 NGOs working for welfare system, and they have the largest private school system in India. And most importantly, they have Vishwa Hindu Parishad as their wing that has provided them reach to the rural India and the traditional leadership of the Hindu religion. And then it is the Bharatiya Jana Sangh, which was later on converted into Bharatiya Janata Party. In post-independent India, they faced the Nehruvian consensus that ruled India till today. It was essentially successful because of the role of the Congress in the liberation struggle, personality of the Nehru, consensus among the property classes, elite middle classes of India, that they need to have this type of polity, and lastly, the murder of Mahatma Gandhi, which actually delegitimized RSS, and it was banned for 1 year during the Nehru period. It argued that Indian civilization is inherently tolerant and produce a composite culture that has a respect to the contribution of each and every community. So it was at that time based on secularism, composite culture, socialism, and liberal democracy. But within the lifetime of Nehru, this secularism was used as a rhetoric at 2 levels. At the center, it was the aggressive secular rhetoric that was pursued by the Congress, but at the constituency level, they follow the communal discourse, anti-Urdu, cow protection, pro-Hindi. And in Mrs. Indira Gandhi time, this democratic also process was centralized into the personality of the Prime Minister, so the entire parliamentary system has been converted into prime ministerial system. Until today, it is a prime ministerial system. And only the popular themes were emphasized. So secularism and all these themes became popular themes to win election. All ideas in this time from onward were interpreted in accordance with the interest of majority that laid the basis of majoritarianism in India. But electoral compulsions also compelled them to reach out to the minorities and provide them space. So it was the basis of the minoritism as well. So minorities were able to find a space in Nehruvian India to preserve their vital interests, like they able to Muslims of India able to preserve Aligarh University status as a cultural marker, Muslim personal law, and number of other things. So majoritarianism and minoritarianism has governed India for entire this period under the Nehruvian state. But it has also created at a social level space for 2 combined identities, India and the regional identity. So there is no one India. There is essentially Tamil Indian, Indian Muslims, Indian Sikhs, and that's how 2 identities were merged and a space was created for the minorities as well. And that's how the secular India existed. RSS rejected entire project of the Nehruvian project and considered it as a borrowed Western ideas to rob Indian of Hindu heritage. Instead of idea of India, they have presented the idea of Bharat, which they claim it is neither a secular nor a theocracy. It is a middle way because Hinduism itself is secular. So Hindu process of assimilation should be initiated. That was on the code of Manu as one of the Vedas in which caste system was presented. Indian Muslims were of Hindu origin was invited to reconvert through the process of Shuddhi, which is now interpreted as Ghar Vapsi, to become either convert back to Hinduism or accept the subordinate status. And they have the agenda to rewrite a new constitution for India, protect the cow, ban conversion of Hindus to Muslims and Christians because they claim it is because of their money, or now the famous term is love jihad because Muslim boys are reaching out to the Hindu girls and forcing them to convert to Islam. And they wish to have a unified civil code instead of separate code for Muslims. And they wish to rewrite school textbooks so it can reflect the Hindu civilization. Their rise to power is essentially in a three processes. In a first process is the process through which they attempted to acquire legitimacy as a rightful alternative to the Nehruvian structure. But so in a way they accepted Constitution of India, the flag of India. Their biggest break came in 1962 when India was defeated in a border clash with China. And in 1967, almost the opposition to Congress win 50% of the state elections, and BJS, Bharatiya Janata Sangh, was part of it. The second phase started in 70s. They adopted the Gandhian tradition of traditional Hinduism as a legitimate tradition and tried to work within for the Lok Seva and the government of the Ram. And they participated in Jay Prakash movement, and later on that ended in the creation of a Janata Party, and it was the first time when they were part of a coalition and came into power in the center. Three of their ministers were part of it. And the third phase was when they attempted to have their own vote bank. It was the direct process of mobilization where they proposed to build Ram Janmabhoomi at the site of a Babri Masjid, change Article 370, which gave a special status to Kashmir, and have a unified civil code. Their rise to power has been very gradual. They had 2 seats in 1984, 85 seats in 1989, 119 seats in 1991, and 161 seats in 1996. In 1998 to 2004, they were in power through a coalition government of National Democratic Alliance of regional and caste parties. 2014, it was Narendra Modi who was able to win after the 10 years of incumbency of the Congress, his own personality, and his successful performance in Gujarat as an economic developer. But they have not able to change the Indian Constitution because it is the most competitive arena. Even their own coalition partners have their own bias to secularism. Some of them even have the Muslim constituency to cater for. They have not able to, they did destroy the Babri Masjid, but the moment they destroyed in 1992 Babri Masjid, their vote bank has somewhat fixed, or the social expansion has somewhat fixed, around 20 to 22%. So whenever they have come into power, they have come into power as a coalition, except 2014, when it was the personality of Narendra Modi that helped him to have around 9.6% more votes, 31.6, around 31.6% vote to have a simple majority in India. They have not able to change Article 370. They have even not even part of it, Article 35. They do introduce during this period, the second period, the 3 talaq issue, try to settle the 3 talaq issue to have a unified civil code, but that was basically byproduct of the division within the Muslim community, between the traditionalist and the modernist. But thanks to power and being in power, they have penetrated into the institution and have the control of the bureaucratic state. India is a bureaucratic state that governs itself as a parliamentary, bureaucratic, and socially authoritarian state. So to have a control of bureaucracy is very essential to implement your agenda. They have almost have the ban on conversion now, cow slaughter, and they have created an atmosphere of immunity for Hindutva forces to force their social values. That is the biggest achievement, that Hindutva values are being implemented through social processes, and they are acquiring a kind of a legitimacy to it. And Modi has also have broken the majoritarian myth that Hindu will never be unified, so Hindu majority will never come. Hindu will be divided among the secular and non-secular. So all the time, one of the group will be dependent on the minorities and the lower caste to win the election. But Narendra Modi has defied this. He has unified to a certain extent the majority and win the election. But he is facing secular resistance. How long he will be able to hold on to this 9.6% vote that he has received in 2014 is really a very serious question. But Hindutva has become a permanent feature of Indian polity. The majoritarian politics has now dominance of the Hindutva majoritarian politics. So majoritarian politics over the period of time is being transformed into Hindutva majoritarianism, where Hindutva doctrinal things are having legitimacy which they didn't have during the 50s and the 60s. They have also introduced an element of masculinity, lawlessness for the weaker segment of the society that is being faced by the minorities. And that dual identity structure that India has developed is facing a very serious pressure. How long this cultural definition of India can sustain this duality is a very problematic interpretation to make, because essentially Indian definition of citizenship is legal and constitutional. The moment you accept Indian constitution, you are Indian and you are to a certain extent constitutionally free to live your own life. Even you can preserve your own culture, Urdu language, and a number of other things. But Hindutva has added a cultural demand to it, and that cultural demand is reducing the space for the minority. They have the support of rising economy, and till the time the economy is rising, Hindutva can flourish because the middle class look towards them for security and stability. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Afzal, for a very informative comment on the topic. Hindutva has become a permanent feature of Indian society. Hindutva has also introduced masculinity and lawlessness, which is brutally affecting the minorities and reducing the space for them to live. Our next speaker is our chief guest, Dr. Shiri Mazari. Sorry? Okay. Right. Okay. I'd like to invite Air Commodore Hardik Iqbal Saab for the book launch and his remarks about the book as well. Thank you very much.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Chair, ladies and gentlemen. My role is rather brief, and I will just briefly introduce the book Hindutva Rising Extremism in India. Ladies and gentlemen, This book is divided into two parts. First discusses the genesis and dynamics as well as domestic factors related to political, social, and economic arenas leading to the rise of Hindutva. Second part discusses the international dimension of Hindutva and stipulates as to how it is impacting regional and world order. India's relationship and global, regional, and bilateral ties, particularly with Pakistan, are also discussed in the context of contemporary rise of Hindutva and resultant extremism in India. Book enlists reasons leading to current renaissance of Hindutva and elaborates its evolutionary process. A cluster of papers by Indian scholars provide fresh from the oval details of manifestations and effects that current version of Hindutva is having on governance and societal fissures constricting the rights and freedom of Indian minorities. These papers also give an account of how history is being rewritten and a new narrative is being pushed down the throats of school-going children. At strategic level, book points out that America's China phobia and raising of local irritants in the way of peaceful rise of China has become a godsend enabler for India to pursue its Hindutva objective, while the US and its anti-China allies look the other side. India is likely to continue pursuing the current push for the rise and dominance of Hindutva within Indian nation. And unfortunately, the menace is bipartisan. Only a difference of shade exists. Congress represents a softer methodology towards Hindutva, while BJP demonstrates a crude version of Hindutva, resulting into majoritarian rule of Hindus. Editors of the book have conceded very humbly that while they were compiling the volume, they, they came across a kind of knowledge deficiency persisting at the national level and international level on this important subject. Through this book, they have tried to discuss some of the pertinent issues to related to rising extremism in India, and they say that the work is continuing and the book may only be considered as the first part towards this objective. This book is available on the stall on my left side and on your right side, and book is equally useful for students, academics, researchers, and it fills a gap in the search of current wave of rise of extremism in India, emanating out of rise of Hindutva at the governmental level. I commend IPS for making this academic endeavor. Thank you very much. Now I request Dr. Shri Mazari to very kindly receive a copy of the book.
Now finally, I would like to invite our chief guest, Dr. Shiri Mazari, on the dais. Introducing her again, she's an academic, she's a journalist, she's a politician, and most importantly, she's the Federal Minister of Human Rights, Pakistan. Welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm sorry about the chaos of my having to speak first because assembly का session होना था but अब वो कल शुरू हो रही है, so the pressure was not there time का. I want to thank IPS for inviting me. बड़े दिनों के बाद आपने याद किया है वैसे. I used to have a long-standing cooperative relationship with IPS जिनका काम बहुत academic काम is really good, especially on South Asia. And so I'm very happy that they chose to invite me for this very important seminar. बड़ी interesting बात है कि suddenly, coincidentally, हिंदुत्वा पे seminars हो रहे और किताबें भी launch हो रही हैं. बहुत अच्छी बात है कि books are finally, our scholars are focusing on these issues. But जो सवाल मेरे जहन में आता है कि why do we, our scholarly work is not consistent. हम suddenly जब fashion कुछ होता है तो we start looking at these issues. I know Mujib has been looking at the BJP and development of BJP politics for a long time, but I think we really need to develop more scholarly work, more research on developments, societal, political, economic developments in our region, which we tend not to do. When the first US intervention in Afghanistan happened, when the Soviets came in, suddenly there were books that were being published about Afghanistan. Then all scholarly research stopped, and it really hasn't picked up since that day. So I think I'm hoping that our scholars in our research institutes and our universities will take long-term looks and start doing research on a number of issues related to our region from an indigenous perspective and not take what is published in the West as gospel truth, because as you know, social sciences is all about value judgments. Facts can be used either way, and therefore interpretations and judgments become very relevant. Anyhow, this seminar is extremely timely because of what happened in Pulwama. And in many ways, Pulwama really reflects the sort of rising tide of Hindutva that we are seeing in India for some time now. India's claims of secularism, we think now they have been exposed, but if you look at post 1947 developments in India, the secularist claims were fading very early. They were unraveling much earlier, including in the backtracking जो Nehru ने की थी on India's Kashmir commitments. From that time on, basically, you see that secularism becomes increasingly a facade for India to push for its global agenda. And India has been very successful in pushing for its great power status at a global and regional level. When they were not well equipped militarily, they used the concept and the framework of non-alignment to overcome their military and economic weaknesses. So they decided they would push for leadership in the non-aligned world. But gradually, as they developed economic and especially military strength, and that really was evident in 1974 May, India tested its first nuclear test. Then India stopped talking about non-alignment, and now it has become a most aligned country, having a strategic and military partnership with the United States, and of course a trilateral strategic relationship with the US, Israel, and of course India. So India's credentials of non-alignment, its credentials of secularism have been unraveling, and with the advent of the Modi government into power finally, without a coalition, the agenda of Hindutva came center stage and became very overt. जो पहले overt था, छुपा हुआ था, वो एकदम से Modi has been implementing with pride and resonance and very overtly. read, and the world, it's there for the world to see. So, क्या है हिंदुत्व की policies? Why should we be concerned about it? It's there are key aspects of Hindutva के ऐसे which really impact Indian society itself. For example, if you look at the hierarchy of the caste system, that's an issue for the Indian society, especially when you see, and we saw, for example, many incidents in Bihar where the lower caste Hindus were murdered because they used a water pump which should not have been used except by the Brahmins. So there, at one level, Hindutva impacts Indian society itself. There's a rigid caste system that to date prevails in India that has not been despite all the laws at the center that the Indian state may have evolved alive, and we see that in the lower caste Hindus by the Brahmins. But in another way also, it impacts beyond the borders. How does it do that? It does so because it impacts in India, and there has been violence against the Christians. So the Hindutva creed impacts the world because we see minorities being abused at the hands of an extremist Hindu doctrine. Of course, we see Sikhs have been targeted. The Indira Gandhi's Golden Temple operation was a direct attack on the Sikh population, and she paid for it with her life, of course. And for us, of course, in Pakistan, the major concern is over the treatment of Muslims in India. We see killings of Muslims. Babri Masjid, and that issue still remains a hotbed, has not been resolved. But for Pakistan, as we have seen in the Pulwama incident, the Hindutva creed affects us most directly because of what happens in Indian occupied Kashmir. India has used all manner of state repression, state terrorism, and India actually has communalized the issue and made the Kashmir issue a Muslim Hindu issue. They have tried to give it a color of religion, whereas the issue of Kashmir is about the right of all Kashmiris to self-determination. And India is trying to convert that into more of a communal issue, which it is not. And of course, its attempts now, there are rumors that it's going to give statehood to Jammu, divide the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which would of course be against UN resolutions, because remember, Kashmir is a dispute not just between India and Pakistan, it's on the agenda of the UN Security Council, so it's an international dispute. And if India tries to change the political character or the geographical character of the disputed territory, then that is in direct violation of UN Security Council resolutions. Whether the world will take note of that or not is another issue. But the other main problem for us now is that not only is India maybe going to change the physical status of Jammu and Kashmir, but they're also trying to change the demographics of the state of Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, by trying to change Article 35A, I think it is in the Constitution, whereby now anybody from anywhere in India can would be able to buy properties and so on if this article was changed. So that means that India wants non-Kashmiris coming in so that the demography of Kashmir is altered, and that they assume at some day, maybe the Indians are finally realizing that they will at some stage have to have a referendum or a plebiscite on the future of Kashmir. So they're taking care of it by trying to change the demographics, and also by altering the actual state nature of the state of Kashmir by separating it from Jammu. So present crisis for us is a reflection of the rising tide of Hindutva, and we have seen that despite the fact that all evidence points to the fact that the suicide bomber was a local Kashmiri boy who had been abused by Indian security forces, despite the fact that it is in front of the world that Indian security forces have been committing human rights abuses, spreading state terrorism by innocent Kashmiri young men are tied to jeeps, Indian security jeeps, and pulled along the streets. Children have died or been maimed because of pellet guns. It's all before the world. And therefore, for the world to turn a blind eye reflects the hypocrisy of those countries that talk about human rights, that talk about democracy, that talk about humanitarian values. Suddenly, all those values are disappear when they come and support India, despite very apparent Indian state terrorism that has been documented not by Pakistan but by international humanitarian organizations, that has now been documented in the UN High Commissioner's report on the Kashmir issue, which clearly shows India's abuse of human rights, Indian security forces' abuse of humanitarian laws. Despite all that evidence, the world decides that India, for one reason or the other, must be tolerated like a spoiled brat of the international system, allowing it to do as it pleases, when it pleases, and it's the same pattern that we see happening with Palestine and Israel, and the same pattern is repeated here. And I want to point out here कि अगर आप UN Security Council की resolutions देखें, तो जो ईस्ट तिमोर की resolutions हैं और जो कश्मीर की resolutions हैं, absolutely identical, एक ही जैसी है. तो ईस्ट तिमोर में तो यूएन सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल ने इंप्लीमेंट कर दिया सारा कुछ, उनको प्लेबिसिट भी दे दी. क्या वजह थी? बिकॉज कि जो मुखालिफ स्टेट था वो मुसलमान स्टेट था इंडोनेशिया, और इधर जो स्टेट दहशतगर्दी कर रहा है कश्मीर में वो हिंदुस्तान है. This seems to be the only reason. Otherwise, if you look at UN Security Council resolutions, and I've studied the cases in detail, they're absolutely identical. East Timor and Kashmir. So we need to be more vocal, and I'm saying not just कि हम एक statement दे दें, we support the Kashmiri struggle politically, diplomatically, morally, और उसके आगे हम बढ़ते ही नहीं. We need to go further. For example, India is recognized, Kashmir is recognized as an occupied territory. If it is recognized as an occupied territory, then whatever the Indian forces are doing in that territory comes under the purview of crimes of war. It comes under war crimes. So whatever the Indian forces are doing legally, we need to examine the issue of their violation of the rules of war, international Geneva Conventions, and we need to reiterate that India is actually committing war crimes in occupied Kashmir. The other issue we need to look at, there are UN resolutions on the protection of women in conflict zones. India has violated those resolutions. India has used rape as a weapon of war in occupied Kashmir. और ये Indian sources से documented है because वो cases Indian courts में हैं where rape has been used as a weapon of war. जिधर Indian forces गांव में गई है कश्मीर occupied कश्मीर में मर्दों को अलहदा करके औरतों को उनके सामने रेप किया है. These are the 3 villages जिनके cases अभी तक Indian courts में कई फिर रहे हैं. So this is something that India itself, Indian media has itself documented. Documentary evidence is available in Indian courts where India has used rape as a weapon of war. So now that India's whole or the whole creed of Hindutva has come to the fore, you have seen कि पुलवामा के violence के बाद मुसलमानों के साथ जो हो रहा है उनकी properties जलाई जा रही है, not only in occupied Kashmir but in India itself also, where Kashmiris are being targeted, being beaten up, and the Indian state is silent on this abuse of innocent citizens of India merely because they happen to be Muslims. That shows the dominance and rise of the creed of Hindutva. And I think we need to do more scholarship and expose India's pretensions of secularism. They're dead and gone. There's no secular creed left in the Indian state today or within the Indian government. And the sooner we recognize it and the sooner the world recognizes it, the better it will be. India is now a state that whose ideology is very much not a secular ideology, but एक हिंदुत्व की ideology है, and that is the battle that we have to fight with present day भारत. उनका जो violence है, उनका जो the whole creed of Hindutva is based on violence, on propagating caste divides, on propagating the supremacy of Hindutva against all other minorities, and this is something that the world needs to take notice of. And this rising tide of Hindutva, my own view is whoever wins the Indian elections, the ideology of Hindutva is not going to die down. Even if Congress comes to power now, it will be a very different Congress party from the original Congress party of Nehru. This will be a party that will have shades of Hindutva. So my concluding remark is that if we think that the elections will bring a change in the ideological dimensions of the Indian state, that's a misperception. India is now firmly entrenched and imbued with the ideology of Hindutva, and that is the state that we now have to deal with as we formulate our policies. Thank you very much.
Indian claims of secularism had started to fade very early on. It's only being exposed now. It's a facade to push a global power agenda. Covert is now overt. And the issue of Kashmir is an international issue of right of self-determination. And despite all the human rights abuses and despite all the locals fighting for freedom, the hypocritic silence of the world, the very world who talks about human rights, is unacceptable. India is being treated as a spoiled brat, just like Israel. I would like to extend my warmest gratitude for these words and these remarks by Dr. Shiri Mazari. I'd like to invite Mr. Hamid Hassan, former Federal Secretary and member IPS National Academic Council. He would present mementos to the Chief Guest. Thank you very much. This brings an end to our session one. We quickly go on a tea break. Tea is being served on your left-hand side. We'll start exactly after 15-20 minutes. Please feel free to grab a cup of tea and stretch your arms and stretch while we gear up for the next session. Thank you very much.